Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. You can find us now on Red Circle, not Podbean, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and many other podcast apps. You can also find us on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. You can find other content there as well. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. I got to get ready for this new intro. Don't have it down yet. Check out also fivereasonsports.com. Make sure you spell that one out. We do not have a paywall. You can get the latest takeaways from Brady Hawk and others. Plenty of Dolphins content on there now, too. So make sure you're getting that from Louis Sung, David Fernandez, and the rest of the network. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. That includes our friends over at Prize Picks. This is our official fantasy sponsor. Make sure you're using that code 5, F-I-V-E. Get your initial deposit matched up to $100. That's right, up to $100. Put down 20, they'll give you 20. Put down 50, they'll give you 50. So it's free play there. And again, this is our official fantasy sponsor for a reason. They just got named the #1 fastest growing sports company in the country. Go to Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. You can play the baseball stuff there, but also the NFL props, the NFL preseason, but also the full season props are all up there. If you feel good about Tua, get in there now. And now, tonight's episode.
Down the bitch gang. Yikes. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, Inspire have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. It's just me and Greg Sylvander tonight. I feel like it's been a while since we've done one of these. We've got another top 5 episode. This one, again, we put on our Off the Floor feed. Make sure you're subscribed there. You can find the place to subscribe on the top of the Twitter handle, Five Reasons Sports. I have it pinned up there. You can go there. It's $3.05 a month, but the first week is free, so it gives you a chance to decide if you like it. So we've been taking suggestions from there. We've been putting topics. This is a little different to some of the other ones that we've done. It's a little more open-ended, I would say. We just did the top 5 individual seasons in Miami Heat history. We also just did an episode mostly on Max Strus. Greg, Alex, and Brady handled that one. For this one, what we're going to do is the top 5 what-ifs in Miami Heat history. And for a franchise that has been as good as it's been, even though the TV networks don't seem to recognize it, winning 6 championships since 2006, 3 championships since 2006, being in 6 NBA finals since 2006, being in the playoffs basically 80% of the time since Pat Riley has taken over. There still is a lot that's been left on the table because of things that have happened to the franchise during that time that were somewhat out of their control. So we're going to take some of the suggestions from our Off the Floor feed, and then Greg and I are going to narrow them down into 5 in the second part of the episode. So Greg, you spin through them first.
So first off, I need to shout out our Off the Floor subscribers, our crew out there, the fam, Off the Floor fam. That's what I'm going to go with. For literally, I posted this. I posed the question, what are your biggest what ifs? We've got over 100 replies already, so I'm not going to be able to read them all. I love all you guys. To any new subscribers, because Ethan just talked about that it is, you get your trial run. It's been quiet lately, and I do want to say genuinely that the reason why it's been quiet is because we genuinely have nothing to report to you guys, and we're not in the business of making stuff up just to feed that feed. So I just want to personally say that, trust me, when this stuff ramps up, we will be active again. But we love you guys. 4 days ago, one of our subscribers gave this idea. And so here's some of the really good ones. What if the Allan Houston shot went in? What if Alonzo Mourning never got sick?
Didn't go in.
It didn't go in. Did I say did go in?
That's what you said.
See how I try to that Heat Knicks stuff. I have trauma that has not been processed from that era. So bear with me as I go through some of these. And again, I can't get to all of them, but there's some really good ones here. So what if Zoe never gets sick? That's a big one.
I mean, that's going to be top 5.
And that's from Ari Simon. What if Shaq never comes to Miami? What if LeBron stayed? That's from Fernando. What if the Heat drafted Chris Kaman instead of Dwayne Wade? What if Butler's shot went in? That's a recent one. I like that. What if Bill Duffy sends in the paperwork on time? Only the most inside and old.
Honestly, that's like
base.
top 5. That changed the whole course of the franchise for sure.
What if Juwan's signing wasn't rescinded? I know I'm throwing these at you rapid fire. There's so many of them. I want to get to a good grouping and then we can stop.
Wait, let me just ask you this because it's in the same time frame. Do you have a what if Mash didn't pass?
You know what? No, nobody had that one. There was what if Riley had taken the Lakers job instead of the taking the Shaq from the Lakers. If when he met with them that had gone through, I thought that was interesting. I threw this out in terms of them hiring Bob Huggins as the head coach instead of Pat Riley. That would have been a scary one. Let's see. This was from David in Parkland. Ethan, I wanted to ask you this. What if we got the Hornets? Is that has to do with expansion probably? And there's a part of that I'm not getting 100%. I feel like we've hit on most of them. What if LeBron had stayed? What if CB never got sick? What if Goran got traded for Jimmy Butler? That's a more recent one that I think is fun. What if the Heat drafted Russell Westbrook or Kevin Love instead of Michael Beasley? What if the big 3 run it back after 2014? That's really big franchise pillar of a what if.
Yeah, I mean that's the what if LeBron doesn't leave one. That's wow. These are honestly
they're really good, right?
I thought we were just going to end up with what if Zoe doesn't get sick? What if Bosh doesn't get sick? Because those are the two sort of that jump out the most. What if they re-signed Dwayne in 2016? Did that one come up?
Yes.
Okay.
And also, what if he never got traded back by Cleveland to Miami and didn't get to have one last dance?
And what if, here's another Wade one. What if he never hurts the knees? Because that may be the ultimate what if, because if he never hurts the knees, then the big 3 era looks different. I mean, again, what do they call it? The butterfly effect, right? Like one thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing, leads to another thing. So this is really difficult to do. I do think, I'm gonna let you go through the rest of these, but I do think the Zoe one to me is automatic top 5. I just think that changed the course of the franchise at that time in a way that people who may be listening now, I mean, you have to be 22 to have been born then. So, I mean, we're talking about a lot of our audience is like early 30s. Okay. You were like 9 or 10 years old. So, I mean, 2 of our hosts aren't even that old. Okay. But the Zoe thing is to me, cause I was there and I was at FAU sitting with Barry Jackson. I mean, this is again, how old the 2 of us are. I was sitting with Barry waiting for Zoe to show up at FAU and he wasn't there. And
I was there too as a fan though.
That's right. You told me that. But here's the crazy part about that one is that the circumstances of that at FAU and everything else was going on. Like everybody who was here now was there then. Like literally, like there were like Tim Donovan, who runs media relations, is the person that Barry was chasing. Okay, to try to find out more about Zoe's situation. And of course, what had happened was Zoe had the physical. And then basically Barry turned into a medical reporter for a long time. And I can remember so many times with Zoe looking at Barry and saying, Barry, when Barry was trying to get all the medical information. But people don't remember how seismic that was because, again, some of them weren't alive. But if you look at the 99-2000 season, and we talked about it, Zoe had one of the top 5 individual seasons in Miami Heat history. And he was second in the MVP voting. And they had just traded for Brian Grant and Anthony Mason and Eddie Jones to pair with Tim Hardaway and Alonzo Mourning. That was an elite starting lineup. And they still had Dan Marley and Bruce Bowen. You're talking about that was your top 7. That team could have won a championship. And instead, they did win 50 games largely without Zoe. And then they got swept out of the first round because Anthony Mason, may he rest in peace, basically gave up when Zoe came back and the whole thing kind of fractured. But I'm telling you, we can go through the others. Zoe is on the list. I feel
for sure.
For sure that one's That one's on the list. All right, give me some more and we'll go through the rest.
What if the Heat lost to the Raptors in that final regular season game, got the 4th pick and drafted Chris Bosh instead? That's a good one.
Well, I think all of those are together because there's also
right.
if Pat had drafted Kamen, right? And then, so there's a lot that goes in. And, what if Pat Riley hadn't been watching Dwayne Wade beat Kentucky from a treadmill as he, watching that from a treadmill in the Elite Eight?
What if Dwayne never gets hurt in the 2005 Eastern Conference Finals? That's an interesting one. We've talked about that on the show.
I think we can just keep saying, what if Dwayne never gets hurt?
Yeah. What if Dwayne?
The shoulder too, that year, the shoulder with Dwayne, like all of that led to everything else.
What if they had listened to LeBron and fired Spo?
Well, that's a negative one. That's a negative one. Who would have taken over? I don't even know. Fizz, I guess. Was Fizz ready to be a head coach? That's what LeBron would have wanted at that time.
That's what Dwayne would have wanted, I think.
That's what they all would have wanted, actually, at that time. Because Fizdale was the liaison between Spoelstra and the Big Three. It took a while for them to warm up to Eric. I mean, I know Dwayne had a pre-existing relationship.
Ooh.
It was rocky.
Shout out to Chris. This is a good one. Sorry to interrupt you. What if the Heat lost Game 6 in Boston in 2012?
Well, I can tell you, I think that one's on the list. If you want to talk about a Big Three one, that one's on the list. And it's because we were, again, I love these because it just brings back these memories. 10 years ago, that one is. I remember us being at shoot around before it, sitting with Joe Goodman, Ira Winderman, and we're all talking about who's getting traded after this game and how quickly is the Spo press conference for his firing going to be. Chris Bosh was absolutely going to get traded if they lost. And it wasn't even Chris's fault because Chris was the one that got hurt in the previous series and had rushed back for the Boston series. There has to be a Big Three one. I mean, I know people are going to say the obvious one is what if Ray's shot doesn't go in? But the reality is you don't get to Ray's shot without winning that Game 6 in Boston the previous postseason. So I might lean towards that one. That's the
because it was for the build. You're right.
It was for the whole thing. The whole thing was a failure if they lose there. Nobody was going to give them the benefit of the doubt for Chris getting hurt. Nobody.
100% agree. Alex has been lurking on this episode and has yet to speak. So I'm just, for our listeners out there, I'm letting you all know that.
Well, you
Alex
know why I didn't know he was here? People can't see this, but for some, Alex logs in as me. So it's like there's always every episode. It's Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Ethan Skolnick, and sometimes Brady Hawk. So I thought I was talking to myself, which is what I do in real life. Go ahead.
Alex, are any of these what ifs moving you? You haven't spoke yet. So part of me thinks that you have some better ones up your sleeve. But I feel like we've laid out some really good ones. What if Giannis signed in Miami is another one. I think we've kind of hit most of the biggest ones.
That's the thing. You guys already hit on everything. That's why I came in here late just to, I let everybody know my phone died on the way. So was not able to.
What if Alex's phone was charged?
What if Alex's phone was equipped? All right. So you know what, Alex, think about it. Cause we're going to try to break these down now after the break. The zone one is in. Okay. I think the Game 6 against Boston is in. We're going to come up with the other three here as we go forward. Before we do, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. It's our friend Mark Brown. You got to reach out to markbrownpa.com. That's markbrownpa.com. That's with a C. Here's why we tell you to go to Mark. First, he's a big Heat fan. He's a great guy, but he runs a great small office in North Lauderdale, just north of Cypress Creek off of Andrews in the Wells Fargo building. He can help you with an estate plan. And you need an estate plan. You need to know where your money is going to go. He will go through all the forms with you. The reason that we use Mark as an endorser here is I use him all the time for a whole bunch of stuff. He helped me close 2 properties when we had total disaster on the other side, and he did it calmly and efficiently. And he took care of all the forms. So I make sure that my daughter's taken care of if anything happens to me. So reach out to Mark. You can trust him. 954-566-5678. Again, that's MARC brownpa.com. All right, let's go through them because I think it's almost, you got to pick one per era. I kind of feel like we need to pick a Dwayne one. And so let's go through the best of the Dwayne ones. Okay. There's obviously, if he never gets hurt, There's if he never leaves in 2016. There's if he never comes back. You mentioned that because I think the franchise would be different because they wouldn't have been able to repair a bunch of other stuff. Jimmy's not here if Dwayne doesn't come back. So that plays into all of it. But I honestly, and there's so many of them. I mean, obviously, you look at the 2006 finals. Chicago. What if Dwayne doesn't Dwayne in the 2006 finals? But I just keep coming back to this. To me, it's what if Dwayne doesn't get hurt? Because I think if he never gets hurt, you're looking at. I mean, I understand people have him ranked as the third best two guard of all time, and maybe he still would have maxed there. But there was a time that his peak was as high or higher than Kobe's.
Correct.
To me, that's the great what if with him because what if they didn't draft him? I get it. What if they drafted Chris Kaman and then obviously we wouldn't have a podcast right now, right? Right? I mean,
also I've been told, but people are going to say I'm defending Pat. I've been told that it's overstated how much he wanted Chris Kaman over Dwayne Wade.
Well, Pat has said that.
Oh, has he? Cool.
No.
All right, so
Pat
has
said it's
confirmed.
Overstated how much he's wanted Chris Kaman over Dwayne Wade. I think there's some revisionist history over time, and I know those in the upper levels of the front office may correct me on this, but I had heard before the draft that he wanted Kaman. They wanted Bosh. And the funny thing about that, you mentioned what if they didn't lose, the Toronto game, what if they didn't beat Toronto in the last game? I got admonished I mentioned Tim Donovan earlier. I got admonished by Tim because I wrote a column before that game that they should try to lose the game. Okay. To get up as high as possible. And I got we don't do that. We're the Miami Heat. But I can still since tell you that members of the front office who have been there since then have told me, of course we tried to lose that game and we just screwed it up. So yes, they tried to
even their screw ups are beautiful because Dwayne Wade was the ultimate.
Well, they tried
prize.
to lose the game. If you remember, was it the 08-09 season where Yakuba Diawara, right?
Wasn't it the perception that they lost games at the end to help with the Beasley stuff? I mean,
they could have ended up number one. Yeah.
Yeah. They would.
Chicago jumped like everyone. You know what I mean? Like they won 15 games. They were supposed to get the number one damn pick.
Right.
But
they'll tell you they were intending that season. But they went into that season not intending to tank. That season fell apart, and then they kind of just let it go. And by the way, they were going to let the 16-17 season go too. There was and Andy's talked about this as
Deion and James Johnson were just too good.
Yeah, they were on a road trip and they were supposed to have. This is not out of school because Ellisberg has talked about this on the record. They were supposed to have a meeting when they got back in town. Andy and Pat spoke and said, when we get back in town, because Pat wasn't on the road, when we get back in town, let's talk about the direction of this because they were, if you remember, they were 11-30, right? So it was. They were headed. But then they won a couple games at home and then they just won more games and then they just won more games. Then it was kind of like, okay, let's just see how this thing plays out. And of course they went 30-11 and missed the playoffs by one game and ended up getting bam. So it ended up working out okay, sort of unintentionally. All right. So, but which Dwayne one are we going with?
I say Dwayne's health. The knee all the way back in college, I guess. That's the decision, right? Isn't it? Ultimately, I mean, I don't want to talk out of turn about a guy's health, but I thought that was kind of the narrative, right?
Yes. And so, what I'm doing is number 4, and then I'm going to let Alex choose number 5. To me, the Allan Houston shot's the one, because if that shot doesn't fall, that era looks different. They broke it up because of that. And the Mashburn play and all that. But like the Allan Houston, that team was supposed to win big that year. And the Allan Houston shot just changed the trajectory of where that core went, in my view.
You know what? Actually, if I get the opportunity to punch one up to the top 5, like if I get my one, obviously the Riley, if you don't hire Riley, is so low hanging fruit. Like I feel like we can't use that one. Here's the one, because tell me in the modern sports era where this ever happens. What if the Heat had fired Pat Riley when he lost to a lower seeded team on his home floor 3 consecutive seasons,
Wow.
Like that doesn't happen right now. Like if you lose to the same
Was there
team
ever a
3 years
possibility?
in a row, you don't even get to that third season. They fire your ass after the first year. So like that's so unprecedented, and it would have changed everything had they cut from Pat Riley in that moment. And everyone would have kind of understood it, right? Like Jeff Van Gundy like undressed that team 3 years in a row.
Alex, it's a good question to ask. Was it ever considered? I would love to ask Mr. Harrison at some point. I don't know if he'd ever be honest about that, but I doubt it was ever seriously considered. I think the coaching situation at that time, there was a little bit more room given. And also remember, the Heat had made a major investment in Pat.
That's true.
They'd given up picks, a lot of money at the time, an ownership stake, and he had kind of delivered what they wanted him to deliver. I mean, the franchise was relatively irrelevant before he came. It would have been hard to do. So I'm going to take the low hanging fruit. I think it's a great point, Greg, but I think to throw this one in here, it's honestly, if Mickey doesn't send the pick for Pat, I think that's the thing, because
you're right.
Nobody had really done that.
I'm overthinking it.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the creativity, but it's like nobody was doing that. Like that was before John Gruden, and that was a few years before John Gruden and what happened with the Bucks and the Raiders. And to steal him from New York, and we had Chris Herring on the pod talking about the specifics of that and how Pat kind of orchestrated that behind the scenes. But I mean, it is the ultimate what if, because again, it comes back to this: we would not have a podcast right now. Like I mean, Pat is the reason for all of the content that followed. He's the reason. You can say it was Dwayne or whatever, but Pat drafted Dwayne for the Big Three era that essentially was the first social media sports team. I will always say that. I wanted to do a book once just called Tweet the Heat, and it was just going to be tweets from the Big Three era, and probably could still at some point if anybody could find them.
Don't
but like
give away that idea.
I've given away a lot of ideas. If I could, I mean, there's so many books I should have written during that time, but you could, I mean, literally could just do a book of tweets. I mean, because it was just, everyone was so caught, but they were the first social media, international team. I mean, because remember, Twitter started in 2009, right? So, I mean, for wide use. So you're talking about 2010, and there was just nothing like it. I mean, you never had a circumstance before where like we're outside of Whataburger at 4 a.m. in Dallas, and we're waiting online, okay, slightly inebriated, and we're sitting there, and all of a sudden we see LeBron is tweeting now or never before Game 5. I think it was before Game 5 of the finals. I mean, like that stuff there was no way for the fans to hear that stuff from the players. And of course it got in, it showed you what was inside LeBron's head at that point, which was basically cobwebs. But yeah, I mean, they were a totally unique team, but that team never exists without Pat coming. And I think you've got to say that Pat being all right. So I'm going to let I'm going to stay out of this one. So here's what we got. Let me mention one more sponsor and then we'll go through therapistpreferred.com. Use the code 5RSN, get your premium CBD tincture, the sports cream, the gummies against 5RSN, number 5RSN for 25% off at therapistpreferred.com. All right. So let's complete the cycle here. We've got Zoe getting sick. I think I don't want to pick that and Bosh. Okay. I understand people will say Bosh, but that team with Bosh was never, I don't know what their trajectory would have been anyway, with just him and sort of an aging Dwayne at that point. Zoe's team, we knew what the trajectory was at that stage. So we're going with Zoe. We're going with the Allan Houston shot over the Ray Allen shot. We're going with Game 6, LeBron in Boston. We're going with Riley basically giving up the draft pick for Pat and him being available. Do you want to pick another from that? We're not going to pick the Mashburn shot, no shot, because that's another one from that era. There's nothing as significant now. I think Jimmy Butler deciding to come is a top 10 moment because that changed the franchise back the other way.
What if Kawhi didn't hit that shot and the Sixers are in the conference finals? And Jimmy
Sixers, that's hilarious. Hey, this is a good one. What if Mickey sold the team to Wayne's brother-in-law, Whit Hudson, before he hired Pat? I don't even know if that's accurate, but this is
no, there were discussions. I think
that would
I'll have to go back and look at the record, but I know that some of that because wasn't the Whit Hudson thing what maybe I'm wrong about this. Wasn't that what Chris Herring spoke about when he was on the pod with us? By the way, Chris Herring's book was named one of Obama's reads of the summer. So congratulations to Chris Herring for that. He's done. Yeah. And actually they're making either a TV show or a movie out of it. Just like they did with Showtime. Which would be the fifth, Alex? Alex, is there one from the fifth? Is there a fifth from the modern era that you'd go with?
I missed the first part of the show, so I don't know if you guys already went over this. And I tried saying it before, but very like me, I couldn't find the right timing there, and I kind of threw it in while you guys were talking. So one that came up in my head, I think, was what if D Wade went to Chicago in 2010? It seemed like a really real possibility. I think he took the 2 meetings, whereas like he didn't take 2 meetings with anybody else. And then of course we know what happened afterwards, but that seemed very real. Maybe it's just kind of like going back to how I was thinking at that time, but they came off just 2 first-round exits and things were looking kind of like, bleak, as Zach Lowe would say. Right. And then they end up with, the biggest haul in free agent history. But I was at that point wondering if the Heat were going to lose Dwayne Wade to the Chicago Bulls. And I think that's a good one. Another one that went through my head was what if they don't draft Beasley in 08? I don't know who you guys think. I think you guys said that they would have maybe drafted Brooke.
Well, they were looking to trade down. I don't know exactly who they would have taken. I don't know if it would have been Westbrook, but they were looking to trade down, and I know they liked Brooke Lopez. And Brooke Lopez ended up going 10th. But
they talked with Seattle about trading down specifically.
It kind of depended on where they fell, honestly, and who they would have taken. That was if you look back, there were a lot of interesting players in that top 15. So I'm not exactly sure who they would have ended up with. Russ was not a consensus number 3 pick, if you remember that. He was not at the time.
No.
Even though he had a lot of the measurables that the Heat would have liked. I'm going to
modern
stay away
era
from that
Booker over
one.
Winslow.
What's that?
Booker over Winslow.
But here's why I don't know if it's top 5, because to me to be in the top 5, it has to be championship. Because there's so many moments that it has to be it has to have affected a championship in some way. So we talk about Zoe. That team was on a championship trajectory potentially.
Good
right?
point.
The Allan Houston shot, not so much. Okay, but it kind of affected that era in a big time way. Riley coming, obvious. That one's obvious. LeBron game 6, obvious. And then what do we say? Dwayne not getting hurt? Have we already done 5? We might have already done 5.
What if LeBron never left?
Jimmy's shot going in.
Oh yeah. But they only get to overtime though.
No, not if he. Yeah, that's true.
No, they only get to overtime. I mean, what if Dragic and Bam don't get hurt in the 2020 finals too? That's another one.
Yeah, no, they would have won if he hit the 3, not overtime.
Oh, that's true. That's right. He went for the kill.
I think one of those 2 might have to be in the top 5.
This has been a long summer. We need to stop.
I don't know. Do we have one just totally off the board here?
I think one of those 2 got to be in the top 5. One of the from the Jimmy era, the shot or Dragic and Bam.
Yep. Yeah. That's where I was going to go to. Like, that's a finals moment right there. Like, if Jimmy was supported by a fully healthy Dragic as good as he was playing and a fully healthy Bam Adebayo.
You know what? I'll give it to you because it's the only one Brady was alive for. Thanks for our sponsors, Mark Brown. I want to be able to listen to the end of the episode. MarkBrownPA.com. Get yourself, get your closing done. Get your estate plan done. TherapistPreferred.com. Use the code 5RSN. Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Double your initial deposit. You're probably hearing more ads here on the podcast. I can promise you that we're not going to clutter with ads once the season starts. We have a plan for that. We're working through this transition here with Fansided, but it does put more money in our pockets, so it allows us to expand and do more things. So that's kind of cool. Subscribe to Off the Floor. More episodes coming there.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.